tips for service and hospitality workers.
When I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips. There will be no taxes on tips. No taxes on tips. It's called no tax on tips. No tax on tips.
Another thing that I did not like was like Kamala Harris doing the fucking classic Dem thing, I guess, but in a new format where she looked at like something that Trump had suggested that is like a pro-corporate policy and not a pro-worker policy that masquerades as a pro-worker policy, no tax on tips. And I think that ProPublica senior editor Jesse Eisinger is absolutely right on this, where he says no tax on tips policy is an ominous sign. Pandering matches half-baked, bald Trump pander. Regressive. Most tip workers don't pay income tax and get EITC. Unfair. Why should a bus driver pay taxes but not a waiter? Relieves pressure on corporations to raise wages. That is a key part of this that I have an issue with. Reasons is ominous. Suggests Harris doesn't have a serious economic policy circle that can respond to idiotic Trump blather. Suggests she doesn't have good enough political instincts / communication skills to explain why doing the thing that sounds good isn't actually good. I am a little fearful that she just blurted that out. I'll be honest. But it played in Nevada. Brother, what are you talking about? She's in front of the Culinary Union. You know the Culinary Union already has a policy in place that they are advocating for. It's called abolishing sub-minimum wage. That's it. Here's the statement by the Culinary Union Secretary Treasurer Ted Papa George regarding elimination of the sub-minimum wage and taxes on tips. The Culinary Union calls Nevada elected officials to support the federal ban on sub-minimum wages and taxes on tips. Nevada stands as a model where workers receive a fair minimum wage without relying on customer tips to cover wages. Currently, 34 states maintain minimum wages above the federal standard of $7.25, but tipped employees in many states can still earn as little as $2.13 per hour. According to BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, approximately 1.1 million workers in the United States can earn below the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour. In Massachusetts, the tip minimum wage is $6.75 an hour, while the state minimum wage is $15 an hour. I think it's a very nefarious policy to design. The no tax on tips aspect of it is very nefarious policy making in the sense that like it basically moves the blame away from those who are most responsible for people suffering, like most responsible for their workers not getting the honest wages that they deserve, livable wages that they deserve unconditionally, and changing the dynamic by basically beefing up tipping culture, which consumers across the board hate as well. But a lot of people don't think about that. Most people don't think about what kind of incentives you are creating here and what that might look like down the line. Okay? No tax on tips proposal is a bad idea on the merits, but I don't mind pandering to win the election. Please don't pass the Senate Dems, but this is an opportunity to pander with good policy. Take it. Can you elaborate? Can you please give us examples for us restaurant workers? I think what is beneficial for restaurant workers across the board isn't necessarily to cut taxes on tips, but instead to move to a model that makes it so that restaurants have to give you an actual fucking wage rather than having you rely on the magnanimous, gracious nature of the customer. That's why we have people like you. You can afford to tip 100% each time. I know, but nobody does that shit. And you cannot rely on, like, I've always been the type of person who says, like, you're never going to extract concessions by being nice. Okay? You can't just expect people to be nice to you. You have to forcibly change the rules and the laws. Okay? It is a foolhardy endeavor to rely on the magnanimous nature of the wealthy. If they were magnanimous to begin with, we wouldn't have such severe income inequality. We would not have billionaires. Okay? They clearly are not. I don't think it's like appropriate to design an economy on having the entirety of the service sector be over reliant on people being gracious and basically creating a GoFundMe-like structure for every interaction in the service economy is insane to me. And that is basically what we're doing with moves like this. Like, give people consistent, honest income that they deserve, a livable wage. You are talking like the pubs have empathy, Lamau. No, I'm saying that nobody has empathy. Everyone is very selfish, which is why you have to design a structure that leads to more egalitarian outcomes, because no one is going to fucking do that. Also, the culinary union saying that they want no taxes on tips is one thing. The culinary union leadership and many union leadership can oftentimes push for policy that is not inherently good, that is not ultimately a good policy. Okay? If you remember, sometimes there's also a mismatch in what a union communicates and what the desires of the rank and file are. Culinary union is a great example of this. But this is one of those issues where the rank and file probably also, in short-term thinking, assume that this is a good idea. Technically not a good idea. It's one of those things that it is populist to say no taxes on tips, okay? But if you're looking at it with the lens of, being an adult about it, it's not necessarily a solid idea at all. The reason why sub-minimum wage is devastating is because there's plenty of people who are also fucking broke. And when they're fucking broke, they also are, for a multitude of different reasons, refusing to fucking pay tips. Okay? So then the person in front of you is suffering as a consequence of that. They just served you for like an hour and they got nothing in return. And now they made $2 in that process. Like, that's insane. Relying on customers to keep the business afloat, to keep the lives of these servers sustainable is craziness. And I think there's also a pretty solid counter to it, which is that everybody, including servers themselves, when they are customers, don't like fucking the 25%, don't like seeing 25% at the checkout line. You know what I mean? People are like, what the fuck?